So if there's one thing which hasn't failed to annoy me about the left and liberals' aggression of Andrew Tate, it's the complete misunderstanding of a lot of his appeal. To a lot of them, it seems that the solution to Tate is to tell people how sad Tate as an individual is and mock him as pathetic. This bluntly doesn't work and is a terrible approach because, put simply, Tate isn't pathetic, and until he's in jail, he's not going to be a joke. Now, make no mistake, I understand the reason why. Tate comes across as comedic. He comes across less like the macho, masculine hero he sort of wants to portray himself as, and more like a bad guy in like an 18-rated video game. Mix this with his obvious lying and some really dumb fucking statements which make him sound idiotic.
I'm too smart to read.
You might want to just call Tate a stupid fucking loser. Problem is, that's just not true. Put simply, you can't look at Andrew Tate and declare him a loser because he's a woman beater or a rapist. Those don't matter. In fact, they will only matter if he's actually arrested for them. That's the only way those will matter to a good chunk of his fan base, because those are not things that make Andrew Tate a loser. Being caught for them is what will make him a loser. So here's some stats I want to bring up. I want to call them the 1 in 4 stats. This is just an interesting correlation I've noticed over time. It first came when I saw this tweet here, which linked to some sources on willingness to rape if you could be guaranteed you'd get away with it. The results came in with about a 1 in 4. Then we have the stat on marital rape, whether or not it should be a crime, whether or not it even counts as rape. 1 in 4. Then we have young people in Britain, young men who like Andrew Tate. Want to know the rough stats? Yeah, it's about 1 in 4. People treat Greta Thunberg's tweet against Tate as some glorious smackdown, but realistically the only reason it was because he was arrested immediately afterwards. Had it not been, she'd have just given him a ton of attention, which is what he wants and what Tate has always wanted for years. The truth about Tate is he's not this guy who magically has every young man in his grasp, but he does have a good chunk of them who are already primed to get into him. This is why I find it very frustrating when people talk about the male loneliness crisis and how Tate plays into it, because I don't think that's true. Is there a crisis? Yes, but I don't feel that Tate is really that big a factor. I think, in fact, the uncomfortable truth is there's always been a good chunk of the male population, particularly on the younger side, who would look at a violent sex trafficker and see a hero they'd love to be. And I think the libs are just unwilling to accept that and just want to overplay bad influences rather than the uncomfortable truth that yes, some people are just this way and you can't really do much about it. And not only that, those people tend not to be massive losers. They tend to actually do pretty well in life. Let's look at society this way. 2 Mr. Rogers, 5 Han Solos, 2 Hans Grubers, and 1 Jack. Now, I'm using pop culture because it's a very easy way to communicate an idea, so I'm sorry if you aren't familiar with those names. The point is, you have 2 angels there, you have 5 fairly regular people who generally aren't too bad but are probably going to be influenced by who they're around. You have 2 kind of villains who maybe ain't necessarily insane or crazy or psychopathic, but are fundamentally willing to be pretty nasty to get what they want. And then you have like the complete nut job. Now the problem with society is if you allow the top 3 free reign, that kind of means your Han Solos are gonna have to start to become more Han Grubers, and your Mr. Rogerses are kind of fucked at that point. So I mean, realistically, I think it's very obvious that yes, society has an aspect. That's why every Russian beats their wife. Well, not literally every. I just mean a good proportion. See also Afghanistan and countless other examples of different cultures. Point is, yes, society plays a factor, But the important thing is really to shut down the worst influencers, but to also accept that maybe those influencers are, some of them ain't influenced, so to speak. Not everyone has a tragic backstory and a miserable past. Some people just are awarded for being a certain way and have been very happy to continue with it. And that's the most important thing, is to ensure society's incentives are good, not awful. And this is what annoys me so much about people like Shoeonhead and the insistence that the libs have a role to play in the rise of Tate. Put simply, I just don't believe it. I think Tate is so awful that I don't believe you necessarily deserve sympathy if you're a fan.
But for the majority of people in the Western world, it's impossible to have one woman who behaves, let alone three. Let alone fucking all fucking you at once, all having your kids, all obeying you like slaves.
I don't believe we should look at the young men chanting Free Top G and go, oh, how tragic, how did they get this way? Personally, I just think there are much better solutions. You know, they may not be easy ones, and they may not be nice, but they might be better. If you think I'm being overly harsh, then please consider that I don't believe that the average Tate stan is actually living in their parents' basement and, I don't know, masturbating to the Teletubbies or whatever people want to claim they do. I think the average Tate fan is probably perfectly fine in many regards. And the creepy thing is, the Tate fan who actually joins the war room and puts money in is probably a genuine danger to a lot of people. Recently, passport bro has sort of turned up as a term. Maybe it's because of John Poulos, a Tate fan who murdered his much younger girlfriend and shoved her in like a suitcase. What interests me, once again, is I wouldn't call John Poulos a loser when looking at him. First of all, he's obviously punching way above his weight when you look at how young his girlfriend is and his figure versus hers. Next of all, dude, the guy has 3 kids and he's successfully abandoned them. What's so loserous about that? That's the thing, it feels weird. These people are desperate to imagine this image that all these guys who have the money and means to go around and fuck way younger women in, like, way poorer countries are incapable in their hometowns. Like, maybe that's not the question. Maybe they just want to leave to somewhere where they can legally beat women. Case in point, Joe Lampton, a Tate fan who got his dream and worked with his hero. Now, Joe Lampton's an interesting case because he doesn't really have the same witty sense of humour as Tate. It tends to be a little more based.
Acum că firul 20 minute. Eu doar ce am venit acum. Nu mă sparg, mă de pe mâini și îți dau 20 minute, vrei? Hai, să-mi bag.
And yeah, he certainly gets the Twitter threads going, but he's not exactly killing it with attention. Despite that, he does follow his hero in many ways, including uploading videos of himself beating women to impress his fans. If you find this creepy and horrendous and in poor taste, then hey, congratulations. I also don't care for this music that much. But yeah, what stands out to me is when I look up Joe Lampton, you tend to see a lot of people just making fun of his height, which just feels completely unearned given what a piece of shit he actually is, and that he actually has a base which look up to him. So here's my core issue. I feel like when you mock these people, you actually make them seem less worrying than they are. For example, 2 people linked to Tate are Mike Cernovich and Paul Joseph Watson. Both people have been around for a while. Both have rape accusations against them. What's weird is because they've been memed so much into kind of jokes, I almost don't want those accusations to be true because I've kind of got a weird affection for them due to that. Like, the fact that there's so many jokes about these two kind of makes them almost like a, you know, like a bumbling comedy act to me. And this is why I think we actually should be careful to a degree about treating these people as comedy, because the weird thing about comedy is that making someone embarrassing tends to actually make us quite empathetic towards them, and empathy is not what's needed when dealing with someone like Joe Lampton / Vlad Obu, his real name. This is a man who's accused of basically tattooing things like dog and toy onto women, has by all accounts been quite successful in maintaining these abusive relationships, appears to have done such psychological damage that he's made certain women he probably may well have impregnated himself miscarry. This stuff is fairly horrifying, and this is an important guy in Tate's network who started out as a fan of Tate. So joking about how he's short, to me, feels like just a complete wrong way to go about it. You shouldn't joke about these people too much, or you should be careful how you do it. And you certainly shouldn't look at these people and ask, where's the empathy? Shouldn't we try and understand them? I can say I understand it. I understand it because, you know, I'm still a guy. I still kind of get the pimp fantasy on some level. It's not something I particularly want to work towards, but I understand that psychological little tick, that weird fetishy kind of, oh, that would be kind of cool, wouldn't it? Tate has made this fantasy clearly his brand for years, and it's the fantasy many of his fans follow, and it's why you shouldn't empathise with Tate and why you shouldn't empathise with his fan base. The solution to Tate is not to say we need to fix how we talk to young men. Yes, we do, but that's not to solve Tate. The solution to Tate is an airstrike.